Hello, low ego action heroes. It's Debbie Levitt from deltacx.com, and here we are. It's Tuesday. It's December 1st, 2020, and it is office hours Ask Me Anything, but this time it is office hours Ask Us Anything, because once again we are blessed to have the presence of both Darren Hood and Dr. Nick Fine. So, and I've got a special new video effect to preview today. So while I open up some windows, Darren, tell us who you are and why we should listen to you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Darren Hood. As Debbie mentioned, I am currently a senior learning experience designer. That's LX, another aspect of the experience landscape. I am at Michigan State University. I'm also a professor where I teach the entire curriculum, the UX design master's curriculum at Kent State University, and I teach at Lawrence Tech University as well. I've been practicing in UX spaces, designed my first website in 1995. Been practicing full-time. Hey, Paul. Been practicing full-time for 16 years and as a total for 25 years. Absolutely love UX. Want to do any and everything I can to vault the discipline forward and fight for its integrity.
All right. Along with me, Dr. Nick, who the heck are you? And why do we care so much? Oh, wait, you've got no audio.
I'm muted. No, I'm back. I'm back.
Okay.
That was me. User error. Relax.
My system.
It's good. Hi everyone. I'm Dr. Nick. I so sound like a Simpsons character when I do that. Very much like Darren, a strong advocate for UX, 10-year plus UX. Lots of academicals and all that kind of garbage behind me. Academics behind me. Why should you care? Because we care, and we've got the experience, and basically we're just trying to keep user experience user-centric, and you'd be amazed at how amazingly hard it is.
Oh, unfortunately true. Okay, and I'm trying to put up the question thing. So everybody, this is Ask Us Anything. I'm going to type the anonymous, let's see, deltacx.link/AMA. That will get the questions straight to my email, which is a great way to go if you don't want me to say your name out loud because you're going to complain about your job or your boss. Otherwise, you are welcome to put your questions live in YouTube or in LinkedIn. I'm monitoring those. And we do have 2 questions that were sent ahead of time. So I will start with those. But I also just want to check quickly if LinkedIn announced that we were streaming and see what's cooking over there. And good, LinkedIn announced that we're streaming. Hooray.
Excellent.
So that it's always nice when that works. And we already have Raju here. Thank you. Good to see you. And of course, Paul. And I will start with the questions we got ahead of time. And remember, semi-lightning version. The first question I got is, what's the difference between a UI designer and a web designer nowadays? It feels like web designers are starting to do more UX and UI work to stay competitive in the market. Who wants it? Web designer versus UI designer.
I'll start it off for today. A UI designer in general, of course, the acronym UI stands for user interface. This is used for in agency spaces in the past. The UI designer a lot of times is considered to be the person who works on that presentation layer, who works on the aesthetics, designs, the whole look and feel, the person who comes in with the 3 alternatives to the client to see which one they want to go with. A web designer is a person who is looking at these days, you don't even hear the title very much anymore. They've pretty much been displaced completely and dispersed across landscapes. But in general, a web designer is a person who is looking at the entire site and is trying to address a lot of different elements. They may be involved in content. They may be involved in the visual design. They may be involved in logos. They may be involved in metadata. They could be doing a lot of different things. But again, I have not seen a person who carried the title web designer myself in at least 15 years. And again, because they've been dispersed and now they specialize, these people have all run after other specializations. And that's
All
it.
right.
That's my take.
Thank you, Lightning version. Dr. Nick, UI versus web design.
Okay, lightning version. Exactly what Darren said. So I'm going to take a complete spin. They're exactly the same thing in today's world. Their process is the same. You get a brief, you build something, you put it out there. We don't do that anymore. That's not how it works. So, I mean, that's why UI on its own can't exist on its own. And that's why UX UI doesn't perform well on its own. It needs to work within that whole product ecosystem.
And what I would add to that is, while I tend to see the current definition of UI, not what I would have told you 10 years ago, but the current definition of UI to me is mostly a visual designer. And when I see somebody doing UX UI or UI UX, but they haven't applied any user-centered design process or any human-centered design process to it, and as these gentlemen said, they're just doing what the client wants, I tend to say you're a web designer. So I guess I would say if somebody is being a bit of an order taker, or as I call it in my book, a short order cook, chances are I'm going to call you a web designer rather than a UX designer. So that would be what I would say there. The next question is on the long side. So get ready, get out your notepad and try to, as we said in 7th grade, determine the main idea. Remember that? I used to be so bad at that. So here is the question. The question is, I heard someone mention how redesigning a web page is a UX project, even though there was no redefining of navigation or any other process besides redesigning the website's visual appeal. The argument they used was that by redesigning the website, they're improving the way a user feels, and we're improving their experience when they navigate through the website. It feels like a very philosophical gray area. What do you think? As long as we talk to users, is it okay to call it UX? There's a lot of questions in there.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. There's a lot going on in there. I'm going to jump on this one quickly because there's a little bit at the beginning that I just want to jump on.
Yeah, I'll try to put it on the screen.
If you're refreshing anything, part of a page, the entire page, the entire whole website, you've got to be thinking, why are we doing this? Right? It isn't just to spend money, and it isn't usually just to make things pretty. Yes, there's rebranding and there's that kind of stuff, but usually you want to improve it because it behaves better, it performs better, it's better. You've heard complaints, you've had things that you want to do, your business has changed. There's lots of reasons why these things come about. UX happens through all of that. It isn't, even if you're just doing a visual change, if you're doing an information architecture or navigational change, if you're changing journeys, you're changing perception, you're changing everything. Even just changing color has an effect. So, I mean, UX, understanding how people respond to that change and how their behavior might change and how whether that behavior is good or bad for you as a business, is all really, really important stuff. So I think it's your misconception. I don't mean this in a bad way. I'm just trying to help you out here in that UX is a way of thinking. It's a state of mind that we execute in research and design. And that's the bit that everybody's talking about product thinking and there. What about UX thinking? Right?
You and I already did thinking. Is UX a mindset, Dr. Nick? We had that. Wasn't that episode 61 or something? Is UX a mindset? No, it's doing things. Darren, I've got the question on the screen. I know it's a little bit small. I don't know if you can read it, but there were 2.5 questions in there. Anything you want to speak to?
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on what Dr. Nick said. The first thing that hits me is that it is important that we understand what UX truly is. And so I lean on how I like to approach things when I talk about the 4 pillars. If anybody's ever seen that illustration I have of the landscape of UX. Okay, we're going to do a redesign. Well, if we're going to quote unquote UX this thing, then that means that we need to identify current state. It's a holistic, when you talk about bringing UX into play, we're talking about a very holistic look at where we are now. What is our current state? Where is it that we need to go? We likely need to perform, since the site already exists. We need to make sure that we look at things from a competitive landscape standpoint. We need to evaluate the site currently heuristically. We need to look at the usability. We need to look at the information architecture. We need to engage in some type of research to see if maybe we can uncover other things that might be an issue that folks didn't know about. I mean, websites used to have a 1.5 year life cycle. And when you did a redesign, when you rolled out the next gen version of a site, you would automatically, like the next week, you would start working on the next gen of the next gen.
So wonderful.
So it's always that there's always this ongoing thing. Again, heuristics, usability, information architecture, research, the 9 or 8 to 12 different types of research that you can do to either validate or discover things that should fit into your UX strategy as a whole. Then you get you start taking a look at the interaction design principles. You start looking at this. This is not something that somebody just looking to make something pretty even thinks to do. That mindset, that holistic perspective, that strategic element, which is what UX as a whole is a strategy in and of itself. So you have to look at it from a very broad perspective. It's never just making it pretty. It's never just making a couple of changes. And I cannot tell you, and I'm sure Debbie and Dr. Nick have experienced the same. People think that there's 1 or 2 things they want to do. And then when you show them what you came up with, they will always say, wow, I never thought about that. That's why you bring the UX person in, because we do see things that other people don't see. We do expect things that other people don't expect. We live inside the heads of our users.
And
we
Paul
are
is
the
being
ones
silly.
that understand what's happening.
Just going to say, Paul's being silly. Let's be honest. The only thing that makes a user's feelings relevant is whether I get that credit card in the end. So if you don't mind, something I'd like to add to this is, the person asking the question appears to be concerned. Can we call this UX? Can we not call this UX? And again, I'll be okay calling something UX if users were involved in research and testing and we're designing for needs and tasks. But then the question also says the person claimed that by redesigning the website, they're improving the way a user feels. That sounds like something we didn't really measure. That sounds like it could be a guess. And Darren's raising his hand. I'm not even done with my sentence. Do I get to finish my sentence?
I'm just chiming in. I know you're seeing me. I'm just chiming in. I want to tap on something to the end.
You're like totally big on my screen. You're like this.
Go ahead. I'll wait.
Thanks. So you're like, now I'm like, what am I talking about again? Anyway, I wasn't going to go on too long because we do have another question waiting. And don't forget, everybody, you can ask questions anonymously at deltacx.link/AMA. It'll come into my email. But what I was going to say was, we're improving the way a user feels. Okay, but how do we know that? How did we measure that they were feeling ill? How did we measure that they're now feeling well? This sounds like something that's being guessed at, and it sounds like some of the things that I've heard said to me at jobs before, and my response was, how did you know that? And very often that ended the conversation. And sometimes I think it's good to have these conversations before that person is doing the visual redesign. And I think the only other thing I would add is that a visual redesign can be a good thing, especially if we realize, oh crap, this isn't accessible. So even if features might have to be changed for accessibility, but even if it is a visual redesign, let's make sure that any visual design we're doing is not just for feels, hold on, I think we can use this. It's not just for feels, but is also to make sure that this is accessible to all, that it's colorblind friendly, that the contrast makes sense, things like that. So Darren, what are you burning to say?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that part up. I forgot to address that part of it. That's why I'm here. Yeah, I have seen people, UX professionals, and I want to make sure that people, because there's this mindset that's rampant in UX today where people want to templatize everything. They want to microwave everything. And they feel that, well, I talked to 3 users. Well, what did you ask them?
Yes. Garbage questions.
Did you have them did you have them perform, and garbage in, garbage out, right? Did you have them perform tasks? How well were those tasks structured? Did you make sure to take on a summative and a formative approach in the research that you did? Or did you just talk to somebody? You can just talk to anybody and it will not amount to anything. So don't just think that because you're talking to users that you're accomplishing anything. You have to be careful about the methodology that you use. You have to be careful about the way you structure things. And there's an element of excellence that's required even when you talk to users. So don't microwave yourself in or just templatize in the fact that I like to talk to some users. Was your approach or did you just talk to users? Don't just go through the motions. Because if you go through the motions, you're going to hurt yourself. You're going to damage your own credibility. You're going to hurt the project that you're working on. You're going to damage the credibility of your internal UX team, and the list goes on and on and on. So be careful.
But the most important part is
do it right.
You'll build the wrong thing. That's all I wanted to say.
All right. Well, on that note, speaking of someone who reminds us that we might be solving the wrong problem very well, Larry Marine is here, and or hopefully he's still here. And his question is, Darren, brilliant response in your LinkedIn post about paid bootcamp projects. I think that was your response under my post, where students must qualify for projects. Larry's question is, how much impact will that have on forcing the quality or credibility of education? Darren.
And I absolutely love that because, and I was just reminded, this is going to sound funny. I'm not just a UX professional. I have to start making sure that I'm branding myself as an educator. I have been in education spaces for some time, and now that's me. I am a UX professional and I am a UX educator to the extent that getting my PhD in is educational leadership. And I understand how those things work at leadership levels. I understand how things are supposed to be structured. I understand how you go through the process of achieving certain things. When people engage with me on LinkedIn and they ask me about boot camps or education, they may not understand that I'm coming from a perspective that a lot of other folks are not. It's not that what they're saying is invalid. It's not. I can just add another layer to that cake because I know something about what it takes. And like with boot camps in particular, one of the things in particular is I know the labor. Do you know what it takes to achieve accreditation? And one of the main reasons why a university, if you can afford it, is a better choice because you want to start a boot camp and you want to jump through all the red tape, then just go do it. There's nobody to stop you, and there's going to be plenty of people that are going to sign up. The thing I love, and directly with what Larry's asking, is that, and a lot of people didn't hear the question, and it was that would it be okay, or what could we do to pay people if people were working on a project at school and a business is paying
the school
for this project to be done, paying the school? Wouldn't it be fair for the students to receive some of that income since they're doing work that the school is being paid for? And that is a fantastic idea. The way that things work in academia is because it sounded, one of the things I said was it sounds exactly like what they're debating now about student athletes. You can have your picture show up on the front of a Madden game. You're not going to receive any money for that. And then the students, if they do receive money, then the next thing you know, the institution is undergoing sanctions and things like that. It is the same type of they're debating about it, and eventually they're going to be doing it. Same thing could be done if GM, General Motors, will use them, contracts with an institution to run a project, and students are being used to work on the project, and GM is going to pay that institution. It would only be fair for students to receive part of that money. However, you can't just let any old student come in to work on that project. Just like you have to qualify to be on the football team at University of Oklahoma, you should have to qualify to work on this project. I mean, you are going to get a stipend. And talk about preparation for the world. When you go to get a job, don't you have to qualify? Don't you have to go through the interview process? So it would be great if that could be done. And that's the way I see it happening. And it would force, because companies don't want to pay for something unless when they don't know what they're going to get, they're going to be a little sketchy. They're going to be a little hesitant about that. But if the school would make sure to guarantee, do things to guarantee the level of quality that would be delivered for that project, it would work out that much better. And that's how you drive the quality, the credibility. It makes the schools do better. It'll make the schools compete. It makes a certain institution more of a go-to source than another institution. So those are the types of things that could and should be done. It will be a process. It will take a while. It can take 2 years to get ready for accreditation. It's going to take at least a year. It'll take actually 3 to 4 years to get something like this established, let alone getting people into it.
Yeah, and if I can add to this, the key word that I just wrote down is standards. One thing that I complain about a lot is I feel like a lot of boot camps and sometimes even universities seem to have no standards for letting people into UX or HCI programs. And it just seems like if you are breathing and you would like to make more money, you can get into this program. And even if you don't have the money for it, they're going to figure out some way. It's a loan. It's a pay us later. It's a percentage of your revenue, percentage of your salary later, which I was convinced was run by the mafia. But I can't prove that. I only have my suspicions. Well, maybe a little bit more. Anyway, suspicions, only suspicions, can't prove it. But I loved working with the mafia back in the day. Anyway, I think that we have to have standards, and the standards start with who gets into the school. When I did my project about a year ago, interviewing people who were unhappy with their boot camps and university degrees related to UX, many people said to me, I can't believe I'm going to compete for jobs with those people. I saw so many people in my class who aren't going to make it. They sucked. Their work was bad. Their attitude was bad. Their personality was bad. And the teachers just told them they were great and gave them the gold stars and the trophies, and everybody got their certificate. And I can't believe I'm out there looking like these people. So to me, if education wants to clean itself up, yes, we do need to take more looks at curriculum and who's teaching this stuff. But ultimately, I think that we really, really have to start with not everybody gets into hairdressing school. Not everybody gets into plumbing school. And I don't understand why everybody gets into UX school and everyone graduates. I mean, I Googled for my book, I Googled failed hairdressing school. And I found all of these online forums with these people saying, oh my God, I just failed the final exam at hairdressing school again. And evidently, it's tough. So I don't and I respect hairdressers. Got my hair cut last week, first time in a year, thanks pandemic. And I respect them, and I can't do their work. And I don't understand why UX isn't at least as stringent as plumbing and hairdressing and any other profession. So there you go. We've got a mountain of questions coming in today, partially because
Debbie, can I just...
Oh, yeah, sure.
Just want to add, though, that when we say education, we can't leave that discussion without making the massive distinction between academia and commercials. Because the commercials are unlicensed anybody's who have just set themselves up as training companies. It is not education. It's about making money. That's why anybody can rock up. It doesn't matter whether you're thick or gifted or anything in between. Because you just rock up, you give them the money, they go, thanks very much, you're amazing, here's a badge, now fuck off. That's what it's all about. It's literally a money farm.
I agree. I call them certificate factories. I completely agree.
Yeah, they're like the diploma mills. That's what we call them. We call them diploma mills. The for-profit institutions.
Yeah.
That's what they do. Yeah. I know somebody who taught at a for-profit institution and gave the student what they deserved. The student did no work. The teacher called him out, and the teacher got reprimanded. If the instructors can't take a stand, what is that going to roll out? That's what the boot camps are like. They're exactly like the model in the for-profit institution.
They are. They are. And many of them have been bought out by VC firms. And I mean, General Assembly was bought by Adecco Staffing. And so Lambda's always trying to get bought if they can stop getting sued. So, all of these, I agree. But we have a million questions queued up, lightning version. And I think both of you can stay for another hour. Can we do 90 minutes today? Okay, great.
Oh,
So
yeah.
thank you so much.
Ready.
All right, good. Because friend of the show, Ignatius, sent 5 questions. But we're not there yet.
Hey,
We're
Ignatius.
going to, from UX Johannesburg. We're going to move to another question that we got from LinkedIn that I've pasted onto the screen. This is from, I'm sorry, I don't know if your name is pronounced Mako or Mako or something else. You know I'm bad with names. I need phonetics. And she says, what are some suggestions for getting some UX research experience before my first job and conveying to recruiters and hiring managers that I've put time into self-education without putting out a self-indulgent portfolio that's full of introspective insights and fluff? I feel paralyzed from information overload after weeks of passively digesting information about UX. I'm under here, by the way. Oh, are you pointing at me? You pointing at Nick? Who you?
No,
who wants
I'm deferring to Dr. Nick. It's Dr. Nick's turn to go first.
Dr. Nick, do you wanna take this one? You have question face.
He's meditating.
No. I'm just trying to absorb what like you just said earlier at primary school. I'm trying to find out what the issues or the questions.
Determine the main idea.
That's the one. Okay, so I don't know what it's like to be hired as a newbie in today's world, so I've got to put that out there. I would say briefly, if I'm hiring newbies, which I have done, I'm after attitude. I don't really care about your experience. So I don't know if people are hiring like me though, so I don't want to give you bad advice, but I think it's all about your inquisitive nature and attention to detail and your investigative skills, but not that you were born with or that you've naturally developed, not that you've practiced before interview or anything like that. Because I don't expect anybody to be awesome when you're coming into this new. I just expect you to be a nice some putty to work with. You know what I mean? I mean, somebody that's formable, moldable, that will absorb knowledge and learn. Simple. You know, and the reason why, and I think that Darren, Debbie, and I have all said this repeatedly over many episodes, where UX fails, it doesn't have the internal mentorship systems that design and other creative industries have. We're not formally mentoring people. Most managers can't mentor, and that's a fundamental problem, which is why education places like that exist. But I'm getting way off the topic. So in a nutshell, my lightning version is basically I would just show up and be all about the nature of research and wanting to learn and be an open mind. That for me does the job.
Darren, lightning.
Yep, my lightning version has an A, B, and a C. The first on the line of what Dr. Nick just said. Mentorship. If you can get hired at a place and hopefully have a good leader, that's going to help you grow by leaps and bounds. Absolutely. There's a lot that's there. There was a discussion we were having, part B, about this very same thing on LinkedIn. And I recommended that people, an easy way to do it is Coursera has a program that I have been endorsing. It's $49 a month for 9 months, and you get to learn about design and research. So that helps you get exposed to some of the practices and the principles, helps you lay a good foundation. The other thing is I want to address in that question was the issue of feeling overwhelmed. Being overwhelmed by information, that information overload is real, but you just have to slow that bus down. Because if you get on board with UX, then you are opting into lifelong learning. So the information will never stop coming. You'll never stop learning. You'll never stop growing. You have to learn. It's a skill you'll develop, but you slow the train down. And you just keep learning more. You just keep doing more. And you keep not only just learning it, but learning how to apply it. So you go from knowledge to a point of mastery. And then when you reach that point, you automatically slow down what's going on. And you think slower, thinking slow and fast, that whole bit from that fantastic book, you slow things down, including the information that's coming, and you end up processing everything that comes across your plate. So that's just the way things go.
Was that A, B, and C?
Yes, it was.
All right, good. Larry wanted to add to that, and actually, I don't totally agree with Larry here. Larry says, I'd like to suggest that newbies do brief pro bono UX audits for startups. It gives a startup something valuable, gives you experience and something to add to your portfolio. In general, I tell newbies not to do any work without having a mentor or coach. If you are a newbie, you are probably still somewhat guessing at how different aspects of user-centered design is done. and your audit might be total crap. No offense to anybody. You're just starting out. If you were a new plumber, your plumbing would be crap. I didn't mean to go there. Anyway, I didn't mean to go there. I ended up there. That reminds me of a time I over ad-libbed at the PayPal conference in 2010, and I ended up yelling, "Nobody's on the internet to see my soft tacos," and that didn't. I had a picture on the screen of I had a picture on the screen of soft tacos, and I over ad-libbed them, and then I had to kind of work my way out of that. Time stopped. But back to the question. I think that we want to make sure, if you are doing pro bono work and some of these other things, make sure you've got a mentor or coach. See episode 59 about having a mentor or coach, because that way we know you're doing quality work and you're not just putting out guesses. Because whether it's pro bono work for a charity or your cousin or a startup, everybody expects quality. And if you're not delivering quality, you need a mentor or coach to help you with that. Now, back more to the original question, I would say, again, I think there's two types of hiring managers right now. I think there's one is, if the job is going to give you some mentoring and coaching and training, then they might be more like Dr. Nick and I can be, where it's like, okay, who are you as a person? And are you coachable, intelligent, low ego, action hero, etc.? Then come on in, and as long as you know some fundamentals, we'll help you get there. But if it is the type of job where they expect proficiency and skill, because you're not going to get mentoring and coaching, and they expect you to come in and hit the ground running, then hypothetically you need some sort of portfolio that says, I can hit the ground running. And that's where you might need more time, more practice, and that's where the mentoring and coaching comes back in again. Or walk away. But then you'll get no job.
For me, that's a red flag. That's a red flag. I know you need to get into the industry.
Yeah, the problem is there are almost no junior jobs right now, and almost nobody is mentoring and coaching. I'll be coming out in a couple of months with my apprenticeship model, and I hope companies will follow it. But until that happens, right now there's a problem where juniors can't get jobs, because if most junior jobs are asking for 1 to 2 years of experience. How do you get an entry-level job when the entry-level job wants 1 to 2 years of experience? So to me, that's where some of the apprenticeships come in. But again, no time for that. I'm going to move to the next question. I hope that helped. Everybody feel free to answer follow-up questions.
I need to jump in. Just
jump in
really quickly. The problem is that most mids, they didn't have a good junior thing, and so they've gone up to mid and they've gone up to senior, and everyone is bullshitting all the way up. This is the problem. I'm sorry to say it.
No, you're right. You're right.
You got to find good mentorship. It's hard.
Yeah, you're right. Yes. So the next question comes through LinkedIn, so I have to type it on the screen like this. Given that user research quality and validity are at an acceptable level, what are your thoughts about the frequency that user research is conducted within an organization? Nick, want to take that one first?
Yeah, I'll be really quick then. Look, this is all about, I think, about the maturity and what you're up to, the nature of there isn't one size fits all answer to this one. Basically, if you're an ultra mature, the top end of the scale, if you're ultra mature like UX Paradise, you should be doing UX regularly as a kind of temperature check to make sure things are good, ticking over nicely. I've got money to burn. We're doing it globally, for all different audiences with lots of great samples. And then there's the other end of the scale, which is we've got to get this thing out the door quickly and blah, 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 So it's really what's the need, and when I say need, the business need, what are we trying to learn? Why are we doing this stuff? I would much rather see it at the other end of the scale. There's a Japanese word, kaizen, which is continual improvement. Yes. And I see UX and the user researchy bit being part of that continual, agile iteration, painting the bridge continually stuff.
Okay, Darren, anything to add?
Is that lightning enough?
It was pretty good. I'm looking at the question backlog. Darren...
I delivered a talk at the UX Strategy Summit about 4 years ago about how Kaizen should be a part of UX operations. This constant improvement. And the employer that I just left, I talked about launching a project that included ongoing research, benchmarking, finding out where we were with all of our products. So there is no And I love that Larry just said is user research actually at an acceptable quality level, because I think the question was theoretical, and the average user, I would venture to say that the average UX maturity level throughout the entire discipline pretty much sucks. So anybody who is at that paradise level, those are extremely far and few between. There is no, and Dr. Nick said it, so I'm just going to repeat it. There is no set way to do it. There is no one size fits all. You always do research, always be able to identify when research is going to benefit your operation, and always be ready to do it. Have your toolbox set, have it managed, expand it, always try to get the resources you can, and go in that toolbox to do what you need to do when you need to do it. There is no set timing. There is no set approach.
All right. The next question is short and probably really just for me. So let's jump in. This is one of Ignatius's questions, and then we have some anonymous questions coming in that I will pepper in between Ignatius's many questions. He says, my observation during a recent trip to Italy is that Italian websites are generally pretty bad. Is this an accurate observation? Why do you think this is? I think this one's for me because I live in Italy. I don't know what you two know about Italian websites. So I am on Italian websites only some of the time. They do seem generally terrible. Then again, I can't say that I love a lot of websites. There's always, to me, there's always something to be improved. But Italian websites do seem to be, when not done by my boyfriend, not sponsored, because he's wonderful. They do seem to be not great. And I think it's because Italy is just not, has not yet made it as a big technology country. There are many centers around Europe that are fantastic for technology and UX, and Italy really isn't there. Most of the UX in Italy are, not all, but most of the UX in Italy is companies, especially agencies from other countries, having a Rome office, having a Milan office. There's IBM Rome, and there's, famous agency, probably Publicis or whoever, Rome and Milan. So I think that Italian websites aren't great. There isn't much I can do about it, and they're generally not hiring me. I've applied for a couple of jobs. They're not interested. So, what can I say? I've just been trying to focus on working with some of the other centers of Europe that are more technology minded. One weird thing I'll say quickly about Italian websites is, especially if they are for a small or medium business, it looks like they think the most important thing on the website is telling the story of the history of their company. And I find that very often the call to action is hard to find. And some of the key, it's like, I'm so glad the restaurant was started by your grandma. What time are you open? So I think that Italy might just be a little bit behind us on some of that tech. But we love them, and I'm happy to live here, and maybe it'll be job security. All right, another long question you want to say something about Italian websites?
Not about Italian websites, but an A and a B. Number one, I found that for websites for countries outside the U.S., if you peruse them on a regular basis, you'll find that they usually lag behind what a lot of us are used to. It depends on what country. Look at Japanese websites. You can't read Japanese, but doesn't there seem to be a really loss of what appears to many of us, a loss of form or function? There are things that different countries, people in different countries, appear to be culturally acceptable from a technological perspective. And so we'll see things that may not resonate with us. When I have looked at a lot of foreign websites, and that's the one thing I consistently see. Could we get used to a little bit more structure in certain parts of the world? But taking into consideration the B part of my statement, that old study that Vitamin T did, where they said that 97% of websites, 97% of the UX on websites, period, are flawed. So it's a lot of work for us, job security, a lot of stuff to get done.
Hopefully. Okay, long question that's hopefully got some meat somewhere in here. I didn't read it yet. Today I had a meeting with the head of product. We brought up the issue of having too many stakeholders and pivoting on decisions all the time. Although I have no problems with this, I do have a problem with the lack of recording these decisions and conversations in a centralized place, because if I'm being honest, we can use transparency and structure. I suggested documentation, but got shot down because that's not lean or agile. Documentation is yucky. Any suggestions on how to deal with this? Oh, I have a million slides on the no true Scotsman of that's not lean or agile. Oh,
Yeah.
All right, Darren, you want to start this one?
Sure thing. The first thing I have to say is welcome to UX. Welcome to UX. That's a lot of places. You go to the Fortune 50 and you would still get a response just like that today. I threatened to make a t-shirt once and just the acronym of too much like right and just walk around the office and just wear that, because a lot of times the things that makes, UX is a discipline of sense. And a lot of times people don't like the sense that we're making. So get that thick skin going, and there is no way to combat that. You can be as organized as you want to be, and you can do things that allow other people to partake of your structure and your methodical approaches. But I would say pretty much what is said in that statement, that question, is about average of what you see, if not worse. So get ready for it. Welcome.
Nick, making your notes. Add to it, please.
Yeah, just rating lightning notes. Number one, this sounds like a product manager issue. Number two, this sounds like committee decision making, in which case that's not okay, and those echelons need to sort themselves out, because you need a brief, or the product manager needs a brief of sorts that says do this thing, and you can either achieve that or not. I understand that business is very flexible and that things happen and competitive and blah, blah, blah. And so you have to change in those things that aren't set in stone. The problem is when you record that stuff down, your middle management or senior or higher, you're exposing them effectively. And nobody wants that recorded. They're guessing at stuff. That's the truth. And you're not going to make yourself very popular by saying, can I record the fact you just U-turned 5 times in 6 months at a cost of £5 million? And I'm not even joking. That happens regularly, and much more than £5 million. Yep. So try to get a brief. It's not. I don't see that as a UX problem, but it can do in some organizations. Really, it's what are you trying to achieve? And if you said in your question, I don't have a problem with the changing, that's cool. So if you don't have a problem with it, then don't get people to write it down, because that's like sticking a gun at your own head, to be fair.
All right. Yeah, my answer would just be, I have a million videos on how to deal with some of the crap that's in lean and agile. I would say go to YouTube and put in Delta CX Agile, see what comes up. Put in Delta CX Lean, see what comes up. I already have a million videos on this. All right, moving on. We've got something that came in on LinkedIn from Sam. And Sam says, I just read The Best Interface is No Interface by Golden Krishna. I loved it, but now I wonder, do you ever encounter projects that are seeking a digital solution, web app, etc., but your research determines an analog solution is best? What does the final deliverable look like in those cases? Nick? Got something there?
One
hand clapping.
No interface. I'm still hung up on that. I'm stuck in this one hand clapping world of stuff. Best interface is no interface. The best interface is the one that's appropriate for the context and the user's needs at the time. That's all I want to say about that, I think.
That's fine. Darren, something to add.
Yeah, it's funny when people try to say, I have heard about the book. I've heard people try to say, we need to come up with no interface. Folks, if people are interfacing, verb, with your solution, whether it's digital or analog, there is going to be an interface, noun. There is no escaping an interface. If you don't believe me, get on the elevator and try to will your way to the 40th floor. It's not going to happen. there's an interface on the floor. If you park in the parking structure, there's an interface in the parking structure to help you find out where you were. You don't believe me? Go to the airport and watch people taking pictures of the A5 and the B10 so they know where they are. That's still an interface. Interface by verb means that you're engaging. The interface is the means by which, the methodology by which you get something done. And there isn't any, if you have a book, those pages are your interface. I have a pop filter right here up in front of my microphone. This is an interface. So you can't escape.
Nick is on fire.
That's nice. I hope you made a lot of money off of writing your deceitful book, but no, that's not doable.
All right, Nick, you're jumping through the screen.
The best interaction is no interaction. You can just paraphrase it. How does that look like?
Yeah. Good luck with willing that gas into your vehicle. Good luck with that.
Maggie, write that one down.
Even when we've got
Where's Maggie?
Even when we've got some kind of ECG mind interface like the emotive guys and blah blah blah, it's still an interface. That's the point.
Yeah,
like mind control
somebody just came out. Somebody just came out with a thing. I meant to share it in LinkedIn and I forgot, and so I'll try to look it up. They just came up with a thing that you wrap around your head, and it can actually use your thought to communicate. Really? Okay, they might be doing it, but that's what people think. We're all just going to walk around and just look at each other, and we're automatically going to know what somebody else is thinking. It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous stuff.
I don't even know what to add to this at this point. So
we are officially in deep water.
Maggie, thank you. What would I do without Maggie? Maggie says, good luck willing that gas into you.
You just get out of the car and go, ooh, Anybody ever say there's this show? I love the show American Dad, and they have this one segment that they put on the show every once in a while called Mind Quad. This guy is like he has no arms and no legs, and he just wills everything. And he jumps on a motorcycle, he's driving down the street because he just wills himself. That's the kind of stuff these folks are going after. That's insanity. It's absolute insanity. Hilarious thought. Maybe you should go make a cartoon.
Yeah, I have to just say, I don't get the whole no interface or least interface. I know what they're shooting for is that, we got Larry Marine
minimalism
commenting. We're obviously saying things should be simple and logical and easy to use, but I think that's been over ad-libbed to be like, it's been over ad-libbed to be like, well, then you need no interface. Well, what does that look like? If there's nothing there, what does that look like? Now it's like some sort of Kubrick film. I don't get it. So all right, moving on.
Try operating your life through Alexa if you had to. You couldn't.
Okay.
And that's the end of the story. Right.
Let me see. What question was next? I have to find this. Oh my gosh, they're just going by too fast now. Where was this? Give me a second. I've got pagination. Where did that go? All right, I'm going to. I will just paste this one onto the screen since I can't find it to put it up on YouTube. So apologies to the person who asked. I think this is the next question. I've heard so many opposing and cookie cutter definitions of what user experience is from mid to senior level UX designers and managers. What would be your definition of user experience? This is getting to the foundation level, but it feels like that's where the problems seem to be rooting from.
That's a fair observation.
Who wants to define UX?
Whose turn is it?
I'll give you my definition in literally 10 seconds. It's the creation of optimal experience.
Okay, I accept. Darren.
And I'll aim this one too. First, the definition. User experience is about applying a set of methods and methodologies to, as Dr. Nick said, optimize the experience for the users and then gain, you want to have gains for the business as well, operating within whatever constraints you're dealing with. That's what user experience is. Asterisk. Beware of quote unquote mid senior level designers, because we're talking about people's titles, and titles today, it's a cesspool, because people are going from hot dog vendor at the ballpark to lead
Senior
UX designer today. So when you say that somebody is you're going to get a bunch of crazy definitions, because half the people who are representing themselves to you as one thing are actually not. So when they say things, I actually talked about this on my podcast. I talked about the overcoming the ambiguity, the mirage of UX ambiguity. I did a session on that. Actually, I think it went for 3 weeks. The ambiguity is out there for the most part. Number one, there is no real ambiguity. People are manufacturing ambiguity because they keep like farting stuff out instead of actually methodically coming up with things. Yeah, and a lot of them are after money, so they come up with different things. Somebody posted an article about UX strategy the other day and how much benefits we would get if we engaged in UX strategy, and they were talking about UX strategy as if it didn't exist. You know, if you've been on an island for the last 15 years and you start talking about, you just discovered it, and we have too many people, too many voices today that don't need to be heard, and they're the ones that are creating this supposed ambiguity. So beware of accepting somebody just because they give you a title. They may not be what they say they are.
Debbie, am I allowed to share my screen for a minute?
We don't have that feature. Do you have a web page you want me to bring up? Yeah, they're working on that.
Okay, cool. It was I've got some conference slides. I'm going to read them just very quickly then. So at the high level, I call it the process of achieving optimal interaction. But at the lower level, and this is probably the level that you want, which is the more practical, it's the conversion of user needs into experience. Right? And so the process, so UX, the combined, you put those two together, you have the process of achieving optimal interaction through the conversion of user needs into experience. That's my definition.
Bingo. And I think that I like what Larry said too, especially the latter part. A lot of people will say, you can't design an experience. We're shooting for what we desire the experience to be. I say, yes, that's it. We call it experience design, but that is what we're going after, because no matter what you do, you can't guarantee that people are going to experience things the way that you've laid them out. So, but at the risk of, we want to make sure that we're not going to be anal retentive. We can be anal, but let's not be anal retentive. We're going after the experience. We want to make it the absolute best. We want to make it the absolute best that it can be, but we won't want to split hairs at that point.
It's the design word that throws people off and the misconception, because there is design in there and it's a big component, but people latch onto that part and they completely miss the research into design part. And that's what UX really is. It's research into design. It's the into bit that's the UX bit, actually. That's the UX thinking bit, if you know what I mean. Right?
Yeah, I think the only thing I can add is I agree with everything that everybody has said. And the thing that I would watch out for is pretty much no matter what somebody's level of seniority claims to be, if you're hearing a definition of UX that strays from what you're hearing right now, I notice that a lot of people like to try to define UX as exactly what they happen to be able to be good at. Like magically, if they're visual designers... Magically, if they're art school background or visual designers, magically UX is really about the aesthetics of making users feel good and producing emotional responses from attractive visuals. If they are wireframe jockeys, then magically UX is about sketching screens. I find that when you hear a definition of UX that strays far from something that is really about human-centered design and user-centered design and all of the processes and tasks and artifacts that are part of that, it's usually someone just trying to, needs engineering.
That's my synonym for UX.
Yeah.
Because that's what we are. We're using needs engineers, whether you're a researcher or a designer. We're needs engineers.
And that's the old book that Jacob Nielsen wrote a long time ago that a lot of people don't even know exists. Usability engineering.
There you go. You can you can do it. There's a book to read out there. So anyway, I would say be careful of these definitions because usually it's been adjusted to what people feel they can do, just like the way empathy's been redefined into what people are capable of. They go, oh, empathy is just thinking about users. Well, guess that's what you're capable of. So let's get to another question because we've got a huge queue of them. I know, empathy.
Get out the science bat.
Yes, please. Lots of SME owners don't care that much about their website. This came up when we talked about Italy. How do you make them realize that they can do better or that it's important? So I guess, kind of your small and medium businesses have crappy websites. What can we do to make them realize they can do better?
I will start this one off.
Okay.
Something else that I talked about at that event when I spoke at the UX Design Summit or Strategy Summit in San Francisco a few years ago, I mentioned something I never heard anybody talk about it before. I think a lot of people do now. I call it speaking exec. If you talk to people based on the way that UX people talk to one another, you're going to have not only a difficult time communicating your value, you're just not going to have an easy time relating or having good sound relationships with your stakeholders and your C-level people. We have to learn how to communicate about what we're doing in language that they understand, things that resonate with them. And when you start talking about business impact, especially when you have research that shows we reduce time to task and we increase satisfaction on the site, and that's going to turn into X number of dollars. When you can get to the point where you can communicate on that and don't use the word wireframe and don't use the word persona and don't even use the word usability, don't use any of our terms. Talk at their level and you will gain a lot and you'll drive the value of your UX business through the roof.
Yep. Depending upon the client, because I came from the web design background, even though I'm not an artist, I was strategizing and planning websites and paid other people to do that. But I find I remember I used to have eBay sellers as most of my clients back in the 2000s, and I once had a family member help out at an eBay trade show where I was going to be selling the design work and strategy work that we did to the eBay sellers, and my family member said that this person had a background in marketing, and they said, well, I'm going to tell all the sellers about your ROI. And I said, don't tell them about the ROI. Like, they don't speak that language. These are eBay sellers. They're regular, everyday people. We've got to talk to them about what makes sense to them. And marketing family member said, no, I'm going to talk to them about the ROI. And I said, please don't, because the average question you're going to get all day today is, so what do y'all do? I said, I don't want you to say ROI to that person because they don't care. And by the end of the day, the family member did fake catatonic face. And I said, what happened? And they said, I couldn't say ROI to anybody. I said, what question did you get all day? She said, what do y'all do? So I think speaking to your audience is really important. And money. And reminding, for people who don't understand UX and don't understand what it's going to bring, I tell people, do not feel like you have to use our terms and our language and our processes and whatever. Just tell them we have time-tested approaches that are going to help your customer satisfaction and your goals and strategies.
This is my
and Larry is adding something. Larry says, I like to remind owners that their users will have an experience with their site, whether they design an experience or not. Why leave it to chance?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, but let me take Larry's obviously right on that. This is my favorite question in the world. I'm sure you guys ask it, but I ask it all day, every day, but usually right at the outset of an engagement. If someone's got a shocking website, forget the website. What are they trying to achieve? What are their user needs or their business needs? What are they trying to achieve? And then the website as a channel, as a thing, fits into that somehow. And it helps meet the goal. It meets their aims, their objectives, or their monetary or financial objectives.
And we've got about 10 questions in the queue, so I'm going to try to move this along. The next question, I think it's on page 2. Now I'm having trouble finding these things, trying to produce my own show. The question, I think they're taking the piss a bit, and it says, Dr. Nick, how do you find UX in NHS?
I'm currently there, and it would be really inappropriate for me to comment on a current contract or even a recent contract.
That's what I figured.
I'm working in the public sector, so I can comment on that. The public sector is an interesting place to be. I probably shouldn't talk about this stuff actually, because this is recorded. I'll get in trouble.
You're done. Next question.
I'm going to stop. What I will say is that I'm happy as a UX person to be able to contribute experience to the COVID projects and stuff at a time of need in a pandemic. That's why I'm doing this stuff.
And thank you for that.
Because I figured it's all hands to the pumps.
Thank you. Yes. And then willing the gas to go in. This was from Aftab, and Aftab says, I have just over 2 years of UX research experience between an internship and full-time work. Over the past year, I've been working heavily on evaluative research studies. Now that I'm looking for work, is it wise to present myself as an evaluative research specialist? Anybody have an opinion on that?
I do, for sure. Okay, very briefly, there's somebody on LinkedIn that's calling themselves an expert after 8 months in, I think, in a particular trade. And I think that's an undercurrent of what we've all been talking about through all of this. People like to inflate things, say things that aren't true, etc. Look, 2 years of any experience in anything is great, but that doesn't make you an expert in anything. And I'm not saying you're calling yourself an expert. Be careful about calling yourself a specialist, especially in today's world in digital, because it's so supple. And I've specialized in something and I'm happy to do it. But UX narrowed down. Make sure that whatever it is you're going into has that same narrowing. Otherwise, look at service design today. They're all feeling a bit, out there right now. I don't want to start any more fires with that either. I'm going to back out right here. I wouldn't present yourself as an evaluative research specialist. I would put yourself as an experienced evaluative research specialist. Unless you want to get through that for the rest of your career. Sorry, Darren.
My take on that is it reminds me of when you talk about, like earlier I mentioned summative and formative. But in summative research, there are certain methods associated with it. And with formative research, there are certain methods associated with that. The same can be applicable to evaluative research. You're going to get further talking about what the different methods you used as an evaluative researcher and market there, instead of pigeonholing yourself into a particular area. You want to talk about the types of things that you did to perform your research job, your day-to-day activities. What did you engage in? That's what people want to know, because you don't want to shut the door on qualifying for something because you failed to mention it. People aren't going to, I wonder if we can find any evaluative researchers. They just want to know most people I've seen, they just want to know if you're into research, and they want to know what types of research you've done. So they want to get into the weeds with what you've done day to day. That's where I think your biggest bang is for trying to market yourself. And as Dr. Nick said, throw out the specialist thing, because that's not you will get no traction with that.
Okay, Paul suggests maybe focused on evaluative research, but no, Darren's.
As a former hiring manager, I'm coming at it from that angle. You are competing with at least 50 other people, just a number off the top of my head. You don't want to do anything that's going to cause somebody to cast you aside. There's no the word focus is not giving you a competitive advantage. Throw it out.
Okay. Thank you.
You got 5 seconds to get that person's attention, and that word's not going to do it.
All right. And then we're going to move on. What is the right pace for UX? And what are your thoughts about, I don't know if someone was verbally dictating this. What are your thoughts about practitioners being rushed to produce deliverables? Well, we hate it.
Part of the course at agencies.
We hate it. What's the right pace? I can't say.
There is no right pace.
Yeah.
It hasn't been for 5 years, but I was at an agency 5 years ago where the traffic manager, who was lovely but really militant, and if I didn't have anything done in the 2 days, I was having the wireframe. I was quoting an entire mid-sized business website wireframe 5 years ago in 5 days. right? That you want to work by rush to deliverable. So that's a sort of, but that still goes on today. That's agency life. That's, if you don't like it, don't go there. Tough.
Don't like it. I'm going to pull up the next question. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if there is any pace, when I think about the word pace, I think about a 2-week sprint. And so if you're working in Agile, if the sprint is 1 week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, then that's your pace. Just make sure you don't overcommit. I constantly tell people when they're doing UX in an Agile environment, don't overcommit and don't be pressured into overcommitting. Get good at pushing back. If you're going to be in UX, you got to get good at pushing back, because you're always dealing with people who don't know what you do, don't understand, and they will try to hog tie you into overcommitting. Don't do it. And if that happens repeatedly, there's always LinkedIn. There's always Glassdoor. Start seeing your way out. Don't end up like I did in the bathroom bleeding out.
Hey.
Because people don't understand what you do.
We've all been there, man.
Yikes. All right. Larry Marine's back, though this is from 12 minutes ago, and says, I hear UX strategy being used 2 ways. 1, ways to organize and promote UX within an organization. 2, an overarching design strategy that guides the subsequent design decisions. Your thoughts on UX strategy?
That is 2 of 4. There are 4 different aspects of UX strategy. I won't cover them all here, but those are 2 of them. And so I actually mentioned when I did my UX masterclass for the folks in Johannesburg, I mentioned how that folks need to start, UX practitioners, most, of course, the people who have more authority or team leads and things like that are going to be more responsible for this, but you should operate your UX practice as an entrepreneurship. And you need to operate it as a business within the business, because you have to not only do the work, but you have to be focused on the health, the status, and the perception of that UX practice in that organization. So that is a strategy. That's a strategic element. There's a strategy that comes along with doing the work, and then there's some other elements that apply to it as well. So UX strategy is a big animal. And again, there's 4 different elements. You can check out my talk is out on YouTube. Check out the talk, look at it. Let me know if you have any feedback, but that's what I recommend from a UX strategy perspective. When people only do 1 or 2 things, they're actually selling themselves short, and they're selling their practice short.
All right, Nick?
Okay, I mean, I've always seen UX strategy, and again, I think Darren may well heavily disagree with me on this, and I'm going to caveat this because I haven't focused on UX strategy as a thing. UX strategy happens it happens naturally. It's going to come about when you're leading a project, because it's a thing. You can't operate without it. You can make decisions. I see a lot of UX strategy stuff today being owned or moved over into the product management space, because when UX was product, that's UX strategy was the management part, was the product management part. But now that product is in play, I wonder what that means for UX strategy now, because a lot of that isn't our role anymore. That's why a lot of old school UXers like me are sometimes a bit put out by product, and I get over it. It's me, not you, if you know what I mean. But it's because you're doing the job that I used to do, but my job has now devolved into lots of different roles, you see, and that's the world. So I would say, that's how I see strategy these days. If you haven't got product management and all that stuff going on, then it'll be the lead UX or the UX team that do that. Otherwise, I still see UX ops as potentially a thing still. I don't know if it's necessary anywhere other than enterprise level, but that is like the third part of this trifecta: UX strategy, UX ops, product management. I think there's something in there to evolve yet.
Well, they've got design ops, but it's not a term that I love. As for me, for strategy, I tend to say that there's a variety of different kind of strata of strategy, that we have to consider the strategy at the company level for our approach to CX or UX. We've got the department level, we've got the team level, and we've got the project level. And so I tend to break down strategy that way, because I certainly approach a project strategically to say what I would do with it and how much time I'm going to spend on what. But then hypothetically at a an organization, if I'm not just coming in as an agency, then there's going to need to be and I think many companies never bother with this. The UX team has no strategy, and the department has no strategy, and the company certainly doesn't have an overarching CX or UX strategy. They claim the customer's right, or customer satisfaction, or customer centricity, but we can tell from their products and interfaces and decisions that's giant F you. And Larry is trying to hint stuff at me. He's like trying to send me psychic messages. I think he wants me to say something about his ProFlowers example, where based on the observational research he did, I can't believe I have to speak for him. Come on, Larry. Based on the observational research he did in learning about how people behaved in flower shops, he was able to create the strategic approach for the ProFlowers website, which was that ProFlowers sells occasions, not flowers. And that's why we all shop for flowers now by occasion, thanks to Larry. So let's see, another question. This one came in from the anonymous universe, so I've pasted it into here. And it says, when working with testosterone-boosted clients who want to skip research and dive right into prettifying UI, how can we pitch to these stakeholders the importance of research to save them money, save us the headache, and save the end users from a bad experience? Well, it's like my entire book. Who wants to field that? I wrote a book about that. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Nick, for the plug. Yay, my book. Darren, Nick, something to add to that?
Go, D.
Sure thing. I think this is, again, it's standard. It's something I've seen over and over, again, over the years. And it's more of this, to me, this reminds me of probably your base operation in UX, that there are times simply not be heard. It doesn't matter how much data you present. It doesn't matter how much sense you're operating in, but it is our job. We're not supposed to be married to our recommendations. Be ready to present, be ready to be the voice of reason, be ready to advocate for users, be ready to demonstrate that you're all about the business, because a lot of people don't think that we care about the business at all. So you have to convince them. Present that you're all about that old Venn diagram and finding that sweet spot. And if they don't hear you, no matter what you say, hey, if we did this, we'd be able to gain X, Y, and Z. And then they blow you off and say, okay, well, I did my job. I was expert voice. I advocated. I stood firm. I pushed back when I needed to. I communicated in a professional manner, and they didn't accept it. Next project. And that's it. There will be times we will not be heard. If people who are not ready for that are not ready for UX, it's going to deal you some very harsh blows if you're not ready for it and accept that.
Nick.
Do it anyway and forget them. I saved myself there. That's good.
You can
do it anyway.
This is marked as not for children on YouTube.
Good. Fuck them. Not literally, obviously. What I'm saying here is that you have to do this. I preach this hard at conference. Is sometimes you have to be a parent. You have to do the right thing, whether they like it or not. Now, that's a very dangerous thing I'm saying, so be very careful. I do not want to get you in trouble. You have to gauge this for yourself. I would do the user research on your own. I would do it with friends and family, get some kind of insight together, right? Friends and family is less than ideal, very far from ideal. Get as many people as you can to rule out all that bias and variance and nasty stuff that's in there. It's still going to, that's not the point. The point is, go ahead, do it anyway. Let's say, I'm going to take a flowers example because it's just the freshest in my memory, right? And they said, yeah, we're going to prettify our website. If you find out from people that I can never find the right occasion or whatever, that's the insight thing that keeps coming up. My as a flower purchaser or as a birthday buyer, I need to be able to find, you know what I mean? I need to find flowers quickly and easily, and I need to compare colors and blah, 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 right? Once you get that down and present that and show it in the design, they will see how that can potentially perform better and make them more money. Because ultimately this comes down to money and ego. If you can get both of those, you're going to win. Finally, if you can't do those things or won't or what have you, walk away. This is not the right place for your professional development.
All right.
Yep.
We're going to have to move to the lightning round because we've got more questions to go. My answer to that question, of course, is I wrote an entire book about this, Delta CX. Please see episode 90, which I just did yesterday. It's called Strategies for Reinventing the Customer Experience. It's aimed at managers, leaders, and executives, and it's my top 5 strategies for how we're going to start to unfuck our organizations and make them truly customer-centric rather than fake customer-centric. You're going to need that. And also in my playlist called Micro Lessons and Conference Sessions, look up Dev and UX, preferably the 45-minute version from October. And that is the conference session that I normally do to non-UX people, to engineers, to product managers, to business analysts, to agile coaches. Watch that one because it's going to show you some of the things I'm telling them about how to work better with us. And I've seen it push out a few boats. So watch that one and see if it gives you some ideas of how to improve that. Next, this one is from Tango Studio, who's in the YouTube channel and says, how is CX different from service design? It's not. Anybody want to add anything? This is the lightning version. Anybody want to add anything?
I can't do a lightning version of that question. I can't do it. It's the one hand clapping question. They're all the same.
I'll do my short.
That's the simplest answer.
Yeah. I'm with you.
I'll do my short. So yeah, they are exactly the same. And a service design map is a deliverable within CX spaces. I would not make any attempt to try to separate the two. There is no ROI in doing so.
Totally agree. Yes. I think whether you're using the term CX or UX, service design is part of that. You know, people know I'm gravitating a little bit more towards CX, but even when I say UX, service design is part of that. So I'm not going to pretend they're different. All right. Next question. How can we best redirect the focus and resources directed at our companies to design thinking to actual user-centered design? And I think I just did a perspective. I think it was because this was from Ignatius and he had seen me do my talk, my Stop Evangelizing UX talk for UX Joburg last week, and someone asked me that, so I had to answer that. So I have an answer for that. What do you guys say?
This kind of follows on from the previous question.
Oh, sorry. Go.
Oh, sorry, D. No, you go for it. Sorry, man. I'm talking too much.
Oh. No, I would split focus and resources because there's a difference. There are not many resources that go into design thinking anyway, other than the budget for stickies. When it comes to focus, the big bang for our buck is on focus. And I think it's a slow train. You're not going to, if people have bought into design thinking and they're usually in hook, line, and sinker. So you're going to only be able to make small dents in that issue, and you just have to be ready to ride that slow train out over time. But resources, there's no battle on resources other than they're going to have to start. You have to spend money on resources to get UX done because eventually it's going to take some tools, some type of resources to do at a certain level. So you're going to have to convince them about that. The whole thing's a slow train, but I would definitely split focus from resources and then address each one separately.
Nick.
I would honestly, I'd run a workshop and I would get people to try to understand what does design thinking with the double diamond or however they're conceptualizing design thinking, what does that mean for us as a team, as an entity, as a business? And then you get the opportunity to direct the conversation and therefore the semantics around design thinking to take it down a level into what I would consider UX thinking. Or whatever that operationalized design thinking is that means something that changes projects and products. You know, design thinking is all lovely and it's all procedural and all high up. And it's great. No, I'm not knocking it, but it's too far coalface. We need, and so if you can get people to not redefine it, understand what it actually means and actually get people to understand that kind of UX thinking is part of design thinking. These are all just semantics. It's just user-centered thinking, and there are different processes or ways of doing that. Top down, bottom up, blah 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 blah. Yeah, I don't want to. I'm rambling. I'll shut up.
Well, good. You only have.
I did share
12 more minutes of rambling.
I did want to plug Debbie real quick because I did share Debbie's article on CMS Wire
Oh,
The
yeah.
CWS
Design
flyer
thinking is not
about-
user experience. I've got that on Medium
Yes.
also. People can easily find that one.
Yep. Anybody who's following me on LinkedIn, look at my activity for the day. I did just happen to share that article this morning that explains the difference between the two, which is part of what you need to know to go. If you're going to try to manage it, then you need to know that nation, because you're going to end up disseminating that at some point in time to people if you're trying to get them to change their approach.
Yeah, or just Google Levitt Medium design thinking is not UX and it'll probably come up. Nick?
Yep.
Just bear in mind that there's a lot of very seasoned UX professionals who struggle around this stuff. So there's an awful lot of stuff when designers wanted to get into the UX game, they kind of guessed at what UX was and they tried to reimagine it. And you're seeing a lot of artifacts and knowledge which isn't valid in the world. And there's so much signal to noise. This is why we do things like this, to try to sort that shit out. Because there's no one else, there's no one refereeing or publishing controls. It's just noise.
Yeah, and I tell people that step one is, first of all, never introduce design thinking at your organization, and then you won't have to go later, wait a minute. And I just put up a video in the Perspectives playlist called something like, is design thinking a gateway drug, Trojan horse, or starting point before we introduce real user-centered design? Because I've actually heard that. I've actually heard like design thinking is the gateway drug and the Trojan horse to teaching our companies about real UCD. And it's not, especially when you teach them design thinking is the end all and be all. Well, then we don't need anything else. So I think that I think the answer that I gave to UX Joburg, and I'll record a Perspectives video about it because it is a good question, was mostly that if you've made the mistake of introducing design thinking and you now have to get yourself out of that, oh God, what did I tell UX Joburg? Now I'm trying to remember. Ignatius! Now I forgot. I'm going to have to I'm going to have to try to remember, and I'll record it as a Perspectives video. So, look between Christmas and New Year's. I'll put up another batch of them. Sorry, everybody. We've only got about 10 minutes left, and we have a pile of questions, so we'll do what we can to get to them. Someone said, Darren had shared a great post about a cymbal instrument website, which, of course, was Dr. Nick's post. So you've got the whole family here. Without a way of providing the user with a means to buy based off the sound of the cymbals. The website missed the beat there. Ba-dum-tsh. Could this be because of accessibility challenges? If so, why is accessibility so far back in the back? Well, gosh, I mean, accessibility because what? I mean, you have to hear the cymbals you don't have to. I mean, Nick, want to take this one? This was your post.
Yeah. No, briefly, I mean, at least from my perspective, it isn't an accessibility challenge. Good UX design should encompass the needs of all users of all abilities and capabilities. Just because I can hear, I want to be able to hear the cymbals, or at least select from them. I understand if somebody is hearing limited or deaf, then that has very much more limited value. I totally understand that. But one shouldn't negate the other. We can do all of these things. All the point around that post was saying, it's a bit like saying, show the thing that you're selling. Just show it, describe it, let me get into it. And it's that much more important in a pandemic world where there's so much more online. Was my whole point was my user need is I just want to hear the cymbal, I mean, I don't want to look at it. It doesn't tell me much about looking at a thing, and they can do it. So that's all that's all I meant by that.
All right.
It's interesting too.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Well, I was going
to go to the next question.
I was 10 seconds. I used to be in sales. They say if you want to get the sales, engage as many senses as you can. UX professionals should be aware of that. Bring that into the design process.
Okay.
And you're talking about an emotional response to something. Again, that's huge.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to not add anything to that because we have a question. How is evaluative research different from other UX research? Does anybody want to take that, or am I taking that?
I'd say it isn't.
You can start with it.
Well, look, in general, there are two general types of UX research. There's generative and evaluative. So it's not that evaluative is different in that sense. It's just one type of research.
Yes.
Generative is
Yep.
mostly going to be learning the things we just don't know yet about customers, competitors, behaviors, tasks, processes, motivations, fears, habits, workarounds, tasks. I think I said that already. I'll say it again, tasks. And then usually that's your generative research. Usually evaluative research is we have an interface, a product, a concept, a process, a prototype, something we're looking to get feedback on, and therefore we evaluate that concept in some way. And so it's not that things are so different, it's just that we use some different methodologies to learn some different things. Anybody want to add to that before I go to the next one?
I call it discovery and validation, but that's just terms, exactly the same thing. In the commercial world, I hear the word discovery, at least in all my gigs, for that generative stuff. And the evaluative is much more kind of user testing, or, you know what I mean? I call it validation. It's not a great word, but people get what I mean when I'm talking about the differences. Sorry, my phone's going. Sorry. The differences between generative and evaluative is discovery versus validation. Voila. Sorry, Darren.
Voila.
And I would say that UX research is an umbrella term that consists of a lot of different methods and methodologies. So when you say UX research, you're saying this,
Right.
and then you break it down into smaller chunks. That's it.
All the things. Okay, I think this was an anonymous question. In many cases, even when you've shared the research and processes and people have bought into UX, we're not always part of the implementation phase and could end up seeing an end product that's not aligned with the original designs. As a consultant, is there a different approach to get more involved in the relevant meetings post-projects? Anybody?
I always try. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Dr. Nick had his hand up.
No, you go on.
I wasn't looking.
All right,
I'm
okay,
fielding the questions.
I always remember trying to align, especially when I started doing UX work at agencies, aligning with the QA department so that I could always work with them as they were making sure that what was executed was in direct reflection of the things that I had recommended in wireframes or prototypes and things of that nature. So I recommend trying to do something similar. A lot of organizations, they try to distance us, they try to cut us off, and then something is implemented and we don't get to put our stamp of approval on it. In those processes, we have to sign off on things. All companies don't do that. So I would try to work towards establish this where you get the ability to sign off on things before they go out. If you're a consultant, if you don't actually work at that company, you may not have that opportunity. So you have to try to do your absolute best. And that's my lightning response to that.
That's good. Thank you for the lightning. Nick?
This used to happen all the time. It doesn't happen so much anymore. It used to happen all the time because, for example, I would be doing the wireframing as the UX consultant and giving it to a designer to effectively to color in. And that caused all kinds of grief. Usually what happened, my wireframe was jam-packed full of user needs that I'd researched and designed down. And then the designer's gone, yeah, but I'm going to move that around and do this differently and just make it different. And that was a big problem. Since then, we're much more agile. We're agile by default. I'm often sitting on the same table, same team, same pod as the developer or the front-end developer or designer, whoever that is. And they'll talk to me. It's a conversation. That's part of the beauty of agile, is being on a product team or having a product team that interacts closely with the dev team. That's the beauty of agile. It's all good. So I like that about agile.
Yeah, and what I want to add to that quickly is, we are on the Agile team. I don't want us to be some sort of center of excellence or siloed thing or a separate thing. We're on the Agile team, and I find that when I can get a team to start creating tickets for me and involving me in these things, as Darren said, sometimes I try to do a little bit of QA or review the builds. I go to their showcases and I see what they're building. So I think it's about creating that better relationship with the team. And a quick anecdote, many years ago, I did a set of wireframes. I gave them to the visual designer, and she completely changed everything I had built. And I said, why did you change everything I built? And her response was, oh, did you make that deliberately? And I said, yes, everything I do is actually
Would you mind
deliberate.
just putting your head on my back here, please?
I know. Everything I do is deliberate. Okay. Oh, sorry. That's the same question. I forgot to copy and paste the next question. This one might be a little bit more for me, and I'm sorry if you guys have to go. I don't want to run too over. We have this question and one more. But if you have to go, I understand. And also, let's remind people, mark your calendars for Monday, December 7th. We're going to be doing a live micro lesson with Larry Marine to talk about how to do a task analysis. We'll be in a mural board. So join us at 6:30 p.m. Italy time. You don't need a mural account. We're going to give you anonymous guest access. So please mark your calendar for that. Should run an hour or so. And it's going to be me and Larry hosting there, using Larry's techniques, which I've seen in action, and you need to learn them. Our second to last question is, what are some of the best ways to evaluate prototypes created on platforms like Acture remotely? Startups often have limited resources to replicate controlled environments and observe users. So evaluative research of a prototype on a shoestring startup budget. Nick?
I'm doing this right now at my current gig. As we've mentioned earlier, I'm currently contracted to the NHS, so I'm not going to say anything confidential, blah, blah, blah. But the NHS, as everybody knows, is a government service and is cash strapped. So being frugal or cash efficient is a good thing. Currently, I was going to be using Teams, but Teams is pretty nasty to use with people because they're not familiar with it. I wouldn't recommend Teams. It's a piece of shit as software anyway, but it's not, people that have it installed by default. Since the pandemic, people are really comfortable with Zoom. Everybody knows Zoom. It's even become an adjective, and it's Zooming and all of that stuff. So Zoom is a good go-to, and that's what I'm currently using as a remote research tool. So I'm dropping them in chat, the link to my prototype and any passwording and anything else, and then talking them through my script with them operating it at their side and the screen shared. Yep. It works very, very well. That's effectively what kind of user testing and those sorts of services are anyway, with a lot more polish in apps and all of that integration. But it's the ghetto or the cheap or the version of doing it. It's perfectly good. If everybody does that, and if the pandemic has meant that remote research has become more practiced and more comfortable, fantastic, yay for virus. But I didn't actually mean that.
Darren?
Yeah, I know. There's millions of people dead. It's not okay.
Darren, help us out of this one?
What he said on that one.
All right.
What he said on that one. Yep.
The last question is kind of strange, so we're going to end on a strange note. And here it is. How to be a junior UX designer without CX experience and research experience. Cricket.
I'm actually confused by that.
Cricket.
Yeah, I am confused. It's no different than anything else in general. I'm trying to understand. The part that confuses me is the mishmash between UX, CX, and research, and how that's all being, how those puzzle pieces are fitting together. I don't get the context of it, so I can only respond in general. Is that you're going to do the same thing you always do. If you're a junior UX designer and you don't have any CX experience, I'm sure that whoever you're working for probably knows that, and you're not going to get a lot of heavy lifting put on your plate with regard to CX-oriented responsibilities, but hopefully you'll be in a position where you can learn something and continue to grow in that area. The same goes for research. If you're a junior and then you're not going to have a lot of experience. So hopefully there's someone more senior that you're working with. You're paired with somebody, hopefully, excuse me, that you can learn something from, and you just continue to expand your acumen, which is going to come through knowledge and practice anyway. So that's probably the best way, based on what I'm seeing with this. That's the best way that I can approach that, and the way we should all have done it, and the way that we should do it going forward. Not there claiming that you have something that you don't. That's happening far too often these days.
Dr. Nick.
Yeah. If you want to be a junior UX designer, the designer bit is the bit that I'm honing in on. You get an apprenticeship, and that's what mentorship effectively is as a junior somewhere, because it doesn't matter what you go on, working under the wing of a real designer, a real UX designer, a real visual designer, whatever form of design that is worth its weight in gold. Now, the one thing that a lot of youngsters or juniors in the world today don't appreciate is UX is hard to get into. I know you know that, but you have to make some big sacrifices in many cases. It isn't like many other careers, or I don't know whether it is, I can't say for other careers. point being is I had to move my family out of London down to Bournemouth. I lived down there, had a child down there, all kinds of stuff, because I dropped from a 6-figure salary, that's a lot of money I was earning, to £34,000 a year, because that's what I needed to do to get my first UX job. I had a PhD, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't mean anything. No experience, nothing of interest, bloom. So what I'm saying is feel free to move around. Go where you can, get your foot in the door, maximize your opportunity in your learning, rinse and repeat.
Yeah, and I can only echo what I think's already been said, which is mentor and coaching. I think that especially when people know that they're juniors, they know that they're still learning, they're in the first job or they haven't had the first job, you just have to keep leveling up, and you need a tough love person who's going to look at your work and say, here's where it's a little weak, here's where it can be better. Don't get a mentor who's just going to be a cheerleader and go, oh, Nick, you did such a great job. I'm so proud of you. I'm sure you're going to get that first job any day now. You know, this isn't a Disney movie. Yeah, this isn't a Disney movie.
This isn't a Disney movie.
We need the tough love. We need the tough love, and I need the tough love. I prefer when someone says, yeah, that, you know, in my apprentice program, I put up a prototype, and one of my apprentices immediately shot 5 holes in it. And I was like, thank you. That's the way. You know, not to quote The Mandalorian, but like, this is the way. You know, we all need mentoring and coaching. And I will take any good advice and level up and improve my designs or improve how I do something from anyone who has constructive feedback. And they might be above me, they might be whatever below me means. It can be one of my apprentices, it can be my mentor, my idol, you guys. So keep getting feedback and don't have confirmation bias, and tune out the stuff that doesn't sound like the praise. Because if you've read my article about Let's Talk About Gatekeeping in UX, you know that there's a big problem with people, especially out of boot camps, who lack resilience and won't listen to anybody who isn't showering them with praise. And I'm typically not showering you with praise. And Larry Marine's advice is just keep listening to these 3. Well, I don't know when that will be. We don't have anything else scheduled right now. All the future office hours are going to be just me. I know we're going to miss these guys, but maybe we can find a way to get them on the show with some sort of recurring agile cadence. So on that note, let's let them each give a final word. And where can we find you, follow you, throw money at you, listen to you? Darren's got a long list. So I'll start with Nick. Where can we find you?
You can throw your underwear at www.
My show!
Where you can find me at Twitter. Well, you guys started swearing first, I think. And
it's fine. It's fine. We've gone down so many ugly roads today. It's fine.
You can find me on Twitter, where I tend to grumble about major corporations. But if you want to actually ask me questions and stuff, LinkedIn is a good place. Although I'm getting bombarded, so if it takes a week to get back to you, I'm really sorry. It's just I can't spend my whole life on LinkedIn. I've got work to do. But be safe out there. Lovely to see you all. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Nick. Find him mostly on LinkedIn and Twitter. And Darren has a long list of places where you can find him and listen to him. And go!
Okay, the new episode of the podcast came out today. The podcast is called The World of UX with Darren Hood. We just released episode number 29, where we're currently talking about, so you want to be a UXer, where we're talking about what it takes to be a UX professional. Of course, you can find me on LinkedIn. We're about to start rolling out some content on our YouTube channel, the UX Uncensored YouTube channel there. I'm on Twitter under UX Uncensored. You can find my Facebook page, which is really just right now a bunch of rehash of the stuff that's happening on Twitter is going over there. So that's pretty much me. You can find me out there. People write me in, talk to me all the time. We do have a show coming up. I wanted to mention a show coming up called Talking Shop. Where we're going to just get together and I'll have 3, 4, 5 random people on the show at a time. No scripting. We would just go for it like we do on this.
Yay.
People submit questions. People are going to come on and we don't know what's going to happen. We'll just come on and we will start talking about things that are UX oriented, and we will start to share those on the YouTube channel and on LinkedIn in the not too distant future.
All right, thank you. And as always, I forgot to mention this some other time in the last hour and a half, but won't you please subscribe and press the like button so that the YouTube algorithm knows that you enjoyed this. You can also join our Slack workspace, which has almost 350 people, and there's no charge for any of this, unlike some other pseudo gurus. Yeah, you know where to find me right here on YouTube, and I'll be broadcasting through December because I'm not religious and I'm certainly not going on any vacations. So on that note, I'm going to play us out of here. Thank you guys so much for being the special guests on Office Hours this week and last week. I hope we'll figure out a way to have you on with some regularity where we can make more dirty jokes. Thank you again, and everybody be safe and healthy, and we'll see you all soon.
Thanks for watching. Delta CX is available for consulting and projects related to CX and UX strategy, leadership, training, problem finding, problem solving, and innovation. Learn more at deltacx.com.